weeks after we became a family of 5, we decided it was a good idea to embark on a camping adventure up the centre of Australia. And what an adventure it was. A 7-week trip in a tent with a newborn, a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old. We tackled some of Australia's most remote dirt tracks, stayed on active stations, visited mining towns, Uluru and made it all the way to Alice Springs. We drove a total of 6,800 kilometres and lived to tell the tale.
Hands? What are they?
It's dirty.
They are a bit dirty.
Dirty.
After another icy night, we had a slow pack up and hit the road. We only had 166 kilometres to do, but it took a long time. It didn't matter if you were doing 20 kilometres or 80 kilometres, the corrugations were shaking everything violently, and there were patches of deep mud and dust that you had to regularly avoid. For the entire drive, we saw only 3 other cars. It was such a vast and flat land the whole time. We saw mirages, and then when you thought you were coming to a crest, it turned out that it was just a flat road stretching out to the horizon, which looked like it was shimmering because it was so far away. By about 1:30, we made it to Coober Pedy, where we found all our gear covered in dust, which is no surprise. We cooked up a hot lunch at the free camp out the back of an old hand-dug mine, which had been turned into a museum. After wandering through the museum, the kids found some friends to play with around the campsite, and by the end of the day they were super filthy, but they'd had so much fun. There were no showers at the camp, so we just heated some water and used a cloth to wipe them down before bed. It had been a great day, and at that point we were totally oblivious of the trouble we were going to run into the next day. Our car battery had died again, and thankfully we were in a big town that had a couple of petrol stations as opposed to where we had been a day before. We had crossed paths with another family a couple of places along the way in the last week. Thankfully, they were a lot more knowledgeable about stuff like this, and after a lot of effort and investigation, Sam managed to get our car going again. He told us, though, that it wouldn't last long and we would need to replace the battery, so we headed into town to try and hunt one down. After searching everywhere, we discovered there wasn't a single battery in town that would fit our car, so we ended up calling roadside assist. But because we were so remote, they didn't have a battery our size and said they would have to send someone from Adelaide, which was going to be at least an 8-hour wait. It wasn't ideal, but it could have been worse. At least we had a campsite and some food and a tent. Just as we finished setting the tent back up, a mechanic pulled into camp and a local guy had a battery our size. We decided to stay another night anyway because it was getting late, and after getting a 6-pack for Sam and Paige to say thank you for all their help, we exchanged numbers because we had a lot in common and were travelling a similar route. It was a quick and easy 220 kilometres to Marla the next day, where we desperately needed to do washing and have much needed showers. We had dinner with Sam and Paige, who had ended up at the same campsite as us again, and it wasn't until my mum messaged that we realised it was actually my birthday that day. The next day we wanted to try and make the 440 kilometre journey all the way through to Curtin Springs. The kids did an amazing job of the drive, and after a quick roadside stop we just continued on and drove pretty much straight through. The camp was already pretty full by the time we arrived, even though we'd made good time, but we found a spot and settled in and had a games afternoon, before having dinner with Sam and Paige and the kids playing with their daughter Mackenzie. The next day we headed into Uluru, which was super exciting, and we had an amazing day exploring the area and enjoying the sunshine. The next morning was challenging. We'd had a shocking night. Piper had woken up 4 times and one of the boys had wet the bed and their PJs and the doona and sheets were all soaked. Ari was super grizzly and the morning was freezing, which didn't help. I was giving Piper a bottle in the car and without warning she did a huge vomit all over her and me and the car, and then to top it off we had a stone chip our windscreen and the trailer adapter plug came loose and broke on the drive over.
Give me your hands. What are they?
We were hoping to make it to a free camp near Kings Canyon, but with the chaos of the morning we instead went to the only nearby caravan park. It was super expensive, but we could do washing and showers and get everything sorted that we needed to. They had a musician playing at a lookout in the evening, which was lovely, until Piper vomited all over me again, and then we had to go back and do more showers and more laundry. The next day was a huge improvement. The kids slept well, and after a slow start we ran into Sam and Paige at the petrol station where the kids had a big play before we headed on to the free camp. We'd contemplated just heading straight into Alice Springs and missing Kings Canyon because of the way the kids were at the moment and how tricky things had been, but instead we decided we'd just sit tight for a couple of days at this free camp, and we are so glad we did. It was one of the most incredible free camps we'd ever been to. It was on a cliffside with the most stunning lookout I've ever seen. We spent the next 2 days taking it super easy and just hanging around the campsite, and for the most part we were the only ones in this beautiful place. Well, beside the dingo. Is it going to be yummy? We started to head towards Alice Springs, but the Morini Loop was in a really bad condition, so we had to double back and have one more night at the free camp. Although we'd wanted to do the Kings Canyon walk, we decided we'd have to leave it for another trip because we'd already pushed the kids a lot over this one. It was a beautiful and quiet camp, but we very quickly discovered that there were little mice everywhere, so we had to put all of our food into the car. What are they coming for, Ari? We don't have any food for you, mice. No food, mice, go away. The next morning, we walked around the rim of the meteor crater that was right next to the free camp before we headed the rest of the way into Alice Springs. Next up, we spend a week exploring Alice Springs, and Ari finally gets to go on the camel ride he's so excited about before we start making the epic journey back home.